More funerals will be held this weekend for victims of the July 4 parade shooting in Highland Park in the United States. 3 of the 7 victims were laid to rest on Friday as the small community tries to make sense of the violence.
As a way to heal, Steve Tilkin visits this makeshift memorial, takes pictures, and talks.
I just want to confront this demon of carnage, if you want to call it that, and for me to do it, I have to come here.
He's lived in Highland Park for 26 years, and on July 4th, went to the parade with his wife and grandchildren.
We were 50 feet from the shooter, and the easiest targets possible, and why we weren't shot, I can't figure out.
He heard the shots and ran, then saw the injuries and one of the dead. Here he is on surveillance video.
I just couldn't wrap my head around what had just happened, and I kept trying to figure it out, and I guess I'm still trying to figure out what makes somebody this evil.
It's the question this entire community is trying to answer.
For the first 2 days, I would say, am I still sleeping? Is this a nightmare? Like, wake me up, because it cannot feel real. And you go through these waves where you're like numb for a little bit, and then you get angry, and then you feel guilty, and then overwhelming sadness, and then you go back to feeling numb, and like, this isn't what happened.
Allie Pedowitz co-owns 7 businesses in the middle of the crime scene. All her stores are closed.
Before this all happened, our street was meant to be a place that provided a safe and fun-loving space for families, for kids.
Healing for her, she says, will come when she's allowed to reopen.
We will be able to reclaim it as this place of where we can all be together and be happy and heal together and just support one another.
And little by little, in a business, in a neighborhood, and in a makeshift memorial, members of this community showing their strength.
I will heal. I will absolutely heal.
Let's go live to the United States and Aidan Smith, Senior Advisor of Data for Progress. And terribly difficult to look at those stories, Aidan, but I suppose the most heartbreaking footnote to it all is that there's nothing of any substantial note that will stop this happening again somewhere else next week.
I think it's nothing short to say that gun violence in the United States is a national sickness. And when we're thinking about how after Uvalde, it was considered historic that we were even able to pass the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And mind you, this is the most moderate of moderate gun violence prevention bills, something that essentially serves to expand some background checks for gun owners under 21 and also fund crisis intervention programs. That was considered to be almost, marvelous that was even able to go through both houses of Congress. And when we're looking at how I saw Data for Progress conducted polling last month that found 66% of voters believe that Congress is not doing enough to address gun violence. And this includes 68% of independents and, of course, 85% of Democrats. We're seeing just this broad national outrage that is, more than 2 decades after Columbine, when it's just completely out of control. And I think that voters across party lines are really looking for leadership that will rein in, sales of assault weapons, look for serious ways to implement universal background checks, and just curb this, like I said, something that really can only be defined as a national sickness.
And lots of people love to use the rhetoric. Oh, it's just part of our culture. It's garbage. It really is rubbish, isn't it? Some of the words that get used in and around the justification of not making significant change.
Absolutely. And, Australia, needless to say, should be the #1 model for the United States going forward when it comes to combating gun violence. We know what happened after 1997. We know that the Australian government took broad initiative and was able to curb gun violence in the country after one horrifying incident that we all know what I'm referring to. And when we're thinking about how the United States has just failed to do the same in the past 2 decades, even with clear public support, including from so many gun owners, and that's what people, are really missing in that, is that so many people, gun owners included, want to see safer communities. They want to see universal background checks. They don't want people to be able to freely buy AR-15s at a level of convenience that people refilling their own prescriptions don't even face. But what's really killing it is just the lobbying pressure in Washington. The matters that parliamentary arithmetic in America is so, it just creates this super catatonic legislative environment where we're still legislating on things that should have been concluded some decades ago in a lot of areas, not just guns, but also stuff like healthcare. So really, this is, yeah, I completely agree with you. This is not just something that should be shrugged off as part of our culture. It's a systemic failure, and it needs to be addressed with serious policy initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're referring to what happened in Port Arthur. And I was in radio broadcast at the time, and I was on air, and I can still remember it like it was yesterday. So I really do feel for the people of the United States who are fighting a difficult battle. And hopefully, if it's not now, generationally, the change will come. Now, let's move away from gun violence and talk about inflation. I think someone's trying to get you there. But inflation, it's a huge problem.
Absolutely. And when we're thinking about inflation, I think it's really important to contextualize this as an international issue. When we're looking at December 2021 projections, we're seeing European countries double their projected inflation rates. And those are pessimistic at the time, but we're seeing, as much as people want to talk about the US as some sort of outlier on inflation, this really couldn't be farther from the case. You're thinking of UK, Germany, Netherlands, all experiencing higher levels of projected inflation increases versus what we were estimating in 6 months ago. And this, of course, we know how political battles surrounding issues like this tend to arise. It becomes polarized. And in the United States, we're mainly seeing either arguments that this is because of spending related to the 2020 CARES Act and the 2021 American Rescue Plan, i.e. our main COVID support measures. And then on the other hand, you're seeing a lot of people arguing that this is a crisis of market concentration and that we should really be looking through the lens of solving this via promoting competition in sectors from airlines to pharmaceuticals to any of the other sectors that Americans are really reeling from at the moment.
Yeah, we're looking at the pictures here. The US has announced more support for Ukraine, and that will be ongoing. But the last question I wanted to pose to you was the US reaction to the awful scenes in Japan, of course, with the assassination of a former prime minister.
I think that it really can't be stressed enough that in a country like Japan, where there's some, I believe, 5 gun murders on average per year, seeing someone who is the single most famous politician in the country. I think Shinzo Abe was the single longest serving prime minister in Japanese history. And that's a position created in 1860? I mean, this is something where Abe is so utterly, you can't even really call him intertwined with the face of Japanese politics, because in many ways, Abe was Japanese politics for almost 20 years, if non-consecutively, because he did take a 5-year break from 2007 to 2012. But yeah, this is absolutely shocking. And I think in the context of Japan, we're really going to be seeing some real domestic ramifications. I know that there's already enhanced scrutiny surrounding the possibility that, and I don't want to quote anything that hasn't been verified by Japanese police yet, but I do know there has been speculation that this could be related to what they call a new religious movement cult. We know all about the issues in the 1990s with one of the cults engaging in gas attacks in the Tokyo subways. But yeah, just thinking about this, I mean, it really is just one of the most shocking political assassinations probably since 2007 in Pakistan when Benazir Bhutto was assassinated.
Yeah, absolutely. Aidan, it's always good to chat. We'll do it again real soon.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.